The Denver Broncos made a massive announcement about their intention for new stadium plans in the not-so-distant future. So what's next for the Walton Penner ownership group, the city of Denver, and your Denver Broncos? And could additional changes beyond the stadium be coming for season ticket holders here in town? All things to come on today's rundown, but we want to begin with a special shout-out to our friends at Denver Regenerative Medicine. Guys, if weight loss has been a struggle, it's time for something real. At Denver Regenerative Medicine, they use full-strength GLP-1 medications with doctor oversight. Start today with a free consultation. Real results for under $300 a month. Book now at denverregen.com. And with that, we want to welcome in intrepid reporter for DenverSports.com on all things Colorado sports and a mainstay here on this program, Jake Shapiro, joining us live. Jake, welcome back to the show, my friend. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm glad that the city of Denver finally knows for sure what the Broncos' plans are. Stuff that we've heard rumors about for 2 to 3 years now at this point, Richie. And when I first heard these rumors 2 to 3 years ago, I was just about as excited as everyone was yesterday. So really, really cool for the city of Denver. And between this and some of the other projects, especially being taken place by Stan Kroenke and KSE, you're looking at the shape of the city and downtown being reformed within the next decade or two. So really interesting stuff and a time to be living in the Mile High City.
Well, the announcement that you are mentioning is obviously the big news that came in the joint statement with the Walton Penner Ownership Group and Mayor Mike Johnson and Governor Polis that announced the Broncos' intention for a new stadium plan, specifically the location, which had been kind of contested, and there were several different suitors and bidders. And in that statement, jointly, the Walton Penner Ownership Group and Company said this, quote, "Today marks an important step forward in a shared vision for the Denver Broncos, the city of Denver, and the state of Colorado. Together, we are pleased to announce historic Burnham Yard in the heart of Denver as the preferred site for a world-class retractable roof stadium anchoring a dynamic mixed-use district." So, Jake, I want to take their lengthy statement kind of piece by piece here with you. One, what did you take away from, or how do you feel about the fact that the Broncos have now put in firm ink that the Burnham Rail Yard is their preferred destination, keeping it in Denver, which I know has been a contested subject for a lot of people here in Broncos country, and not leaning into the likes of a Lone Tree or Aurora, things that could still happen, I suppose, but clearly not the preferred intention for Greg Penner and Kerry Walton.
Personally, for me, the number one thing for this is something we'll get into in a little bit. The second most important thing was that this stays in Denver. They are the Denver Broncos. I think one of the coolest parts about the Mile High City is that all of our teams are based within city limits and downtown. There's only a few other cities across the country that can say that. And I think what stadium development has meant in this city, what happened around Coors Field, what is happening currently around Ball Arena, it's an opportunity for something to happen at the future Broncos Stadium. So I personally am thrilled that the Denver Broncos have chosen to stay in Denver. It offers more transit availability to the games. It offers more bikeability, walkability even. I personally can walk to Denver Broncos games where I live right now, and I'll still be able to walk to Denver Broncos games, which is fantastic. And guess what? I live in Denver's densest neighborhood, so that means about 25,000 people in my neighborhood can do that. And there's far more people that live closer to the stadium than where I live right now who can walk. So that's a huge win for everybody. Additionally, if you look at where this stadium is placed in conjunction with I-25, that is one of the busiest stretches of roadway in Colorado. It is designed for a lot of people to be in and out of it, especially on weekdays during rush hour. So it can handle the capacity of a Broncos game on Sunday with some minor tweaks that we'll get into in a little bit. So I am thrilled that this site has been chosen. I think it's an absolute home run by the Denver Broncos.
So we got into the site, and the Burnham Rail Yard was pretty commonly before this speculated to be their preference, as evidenced by the $100 million plus purchasing of land that took place by the Walton Penner ownership group and the intention perhaps to buy more and expand beyond the plots that they've already purchased. Then comes the design of the stadium. And you saw at the tail end of that statement there where they talked about a retractable roof, multi-use stadium. Now, retractable roofs in the NFL are not as common as just traditional domes because there are a lot of architectural and structural challenges and kind of the unique nature to that build with that kind of flexibility compared to just a dome or being open air. Jake, what do you make of the discourse about using the Broncos Stadium and Power Field with a retractable roof as a multi-use and multi-purpose facility as opposed to the open air nature of the games that Broncos fans have experienced up to this point?
Well, there's a couple different angles on this, Richie. One, we know they want to build a stadium now, which is something they have been coy about for several years, even though we all knew it. It was the open secret that was going on in Denver, right?
Right.
So we know they are now committed to building an a new stadium, which makes sense. Really rich people want to own their own home. That's what these guys are, right? So yeah. I'm for it. I'm happy that they're doing it. It's really cool. The retractable roof part of it. The Buffalo Bills are currently building a new stadium that should be ready for next season. They did not go the route of doming or retractable roofing that stadium. They went with overhangs that should cover the fans with poor weather events, but it's still going to be open. That limits the use of that stadium. That stadium will not get usage in Buffalo outside of football between November and May. So I think it just completely dramatically decreases the size of your overall footprint. And you look at the nature of Denver versus Buffalo. Buffalo isn't hosting premier events. I wouldn't expect. It's not the biggest city in the world. It's not even the biggest city in its state. So, and this is not a smack on Buffalo. I think Buffalo's a great town. Denver is a growing city. Denver is trying to become a world-class city. That is something that has been in the goals of Mayor Mike Johnson, in Governor Jared Polis, and different people that I've talked to across this city for as long as I've lived here. There are certain things that we need to do as a city to reach those barometers. One of those is having a massive convention and arena space type thing like this that can be used year round. Now, when Beyonce does her tour that goes all across the country, she can come here in February, not just in June and July, right, when the Broncos Stadium is able to host those things. Now we can host Final Fours. Now we can host the Super Bowl. Now we can host some of these giant convention events that go to Las Vegas normally because we have this space, or we will have this space. So I think the only thing that the only right move here is to eventually dome it or retractable roof it. It only makes sense. But to have the retractable roof element, Richie, to have it be open to the skies and the environment and the weather we so love here is such a great investment from the Walton Penner Group, because I personally want to be outside when I am in Colorado. And I understand Broncos fans wanting to have snow games still, and and not having artificial grass and having real grass. These are all real things, and it's all a win-win-win. Now, will the NFL allow the Broncos to actually open up the stadium if it's snowing 2 feet in a December game? I don't know. I probably lean against that being something the NFL will allow if it's an option to not have it. But it's awesome that the Broncos are going to try and have it be as weather open as possible, while also keeping the space as something that can be used year round.
I completely agree with you. I think that the flexibility, and people say, well, I don't care if we host a Super Bowl or a Final Four or any of those things. I just want my game day experience to be what it was when I was growing up and what I have as a season ticket holder, which there are many, have experienced for a long time. And I don't want to come across as like I disrespect that viewpoint, but the more flexibility and opportunity that the city of Denver can allow to bring in marquee and premier events in and beyond the world of sports can only be a positive impact for the city from an entertainment standpoint, from a developmental standpoint, and the like. So I definitely side with you on the retractable roof logic versus a full dome or full open air. I think it's a great compromise. But you mentioned investment, and that leads me to my next question, because the next portion of the joint statement from the Broncos and the city of Denver and the state of Colorado dealt with that exact issue. And they said, In the spirit of a true civic partnership, the Walton Penner Family Ownership Group will privately fund this investment and work with the community, city, and state to reconnect historic neighborhoods with no new taxes. That last line there, obviously being a contested subject during the discourse leading up to this announcement yesterday about public versus private funding. And you have an ownership group, which is the richest in the NFL by a significant margin and one of the richest in professional sports. And therefore, there's a large section of the fan base who says, hey, I don't think I should have to pay for this with my hard-earned tax dollars. Well, that's not going to be the case, and there may be some other things that help make up that investment that I want to get to later. But Jake, do you respect or acknowledge the decision by the Walton Penner Ownership Group to fully and privately fund this without leaning on taxpayer dollars the way that we saw with other stadiums here in town, and certainly in the case of Buffalo, like you mentioned, across the nation?
So the number two biggest thing for me is that this stadium is in Denver. The number one, by far and away, is that this will not require Colorado taxpayer or Denver taxpayer dollars. The fact that the Walton Penners are going to do this privately funded is awesome. It's actually what they should be doing. They have billions and billions of dollars that they have made off of us, the American consumer, as the owners of Walmart. For them to have had to ask for more from us would have been Looney Tunes. So the fact that they're going to do this and own it privately and do it all on their own dime is exactly what they should be doing. But it also should be applauded that they're not going to lean on us and go against us and try to make us, worry if the Broncos are going to be relocated and play us against each other. They played some people against each other. Let's be clear. They played Lone Tree and Aurora and Denver all against each other. They did some stuff like that, but they didn't involve the public on any of it, which I applaud them. So they have done a really good job so far. And up to this point in what they said, no new tax dollars, especially with what just happened in the city of Denver and the city of Denver being over budget and having to fire a bunch of city workers and furlough a bunch more. The Colorado budget right now is facing some problems as well. Like, this is exactly what they should be doing. We don't have the money as a state or a city to be giving the Broncos a stadium. The Walton Penners have that money and they're going to do it. So I applaud them for being able to actually do it and following through on that commitment.
There was also an aspect of this that laid out pretty firmly, at least from an intention standpoint, because that's what a lot of this was. It was a step in the right direction, and it was a lot of firm and planted intentions without concretely saying anything. But they did, in this joint statement, give a timetable as to which they think that this will be done. And in that statement, they said, while this is an exciting milestone, we recognize there is much more work to be done ahead of a targeted stadium completion for the 2031 NFL season. Our goal for this ambitious project is to build a community that connects fans, neighbors, and future generations across Colorado. In addition to creating a modern new home for the Broncos, the vibrant hub will attract premier events, driving impact for Denver and the entire Rocky Mountain region. So they clearly put 2031 and that NFL season out there as a timeline, which would be, 5 seasons from right now, going into the 6th season after that. Beyond the timeline, Jake, because these things take a handful of years, and I think that's a reasonable, respectable timeline. What are your initial thoughts and maybe perhaps ambitions and wishes about the multi-purpose and multi-use nature of this development that will be coming to, in theory, the Burnham Yard district of Denver, and what else can be developed around that stadium to truly make it multi-use and multi-purpose?
So we've seen the NWSL renderings and what they expect to do just down the South Platte River, by the way. That stadium's going to be very close to where the Broncos Stadium is, those two stadiums. So, and we've seen that goal of that stadium by that ownership group to reconnect historic neighborhoods. And funny enough, Jamie Torres, who's the councilwoman representing the district that the women's stadium is going to be in, also is the councilwoman representing the same district where the Broncos stadium is going to be. It's in the same exact area. And some of the things that she said in both of her statements and the things that I've said when I've talked to her is all about reconnecting historic neighborhoods that have been broken apart by the highway, broken apart by manufacturing areas and other parts of neighborhoods that can be torn apart. So the rubber factory at the NWSL site used to bring that community together. It used to be a source of jobs, but that's been sitting vacant for forever. Now you put a new park there, you put some restaurant, and you put some concert potential district and stuff like that across, and you have an area that can connect South Broadway below I-25 to above North I-25. That is at the south portion of the Baker neighborhood. At the northern portion of the Baker neighborhood, butting up against La Alma Lincoln Park, will be this Broncos stadium. So you are looking to connect the Baker neighborhood on both sides now to a stadium and having a mixed use development that connects it to another neighborhood. Now, La Alma Lincoln Park is one of Denver's oldest neighborhoods. It is a historic neighborhood that represents a lot of our Chicano and Latino culture that, frankly, this city doesn't pay enough homage to. They kicked a lot of people out of the West Side to build the Aurora campus about 50 years ago. And a lot of those folks relocated to La Alma Lincoln Park. So I am really excited to see significant investment in this neighborhood in an area that has not been significantly invested in a long, long, long time. It can be a great boon just for this specific neighborhood, let alone the entire city, if this is done right. On top of all of this, this area is one of the largest infills of useless space in the city of Denver right now. It butts up against I-25. It's just a rail yard that's been unused for, about 10 years now. And this is an area, as Denver continues to sprawl outwards, where we can grow up and grow together. And I think this is a great opportunity. And for the Walton Penners to get into this game of real estate and wanting to be involved in the city and investing in the city, I think is such a great commitment from them. Stan Kroenke's done this in a lot of ways. And, there's some pros and cons, obviously, to what Stan Kroenke has done in his real estate plays within the city of Denver. But for the other side of this family now, with the Robson Walton, Greg Penner, Carrie Ann Walton part of the family, to get involved with this part of the game, I think is really interesting, and they're doing it in an area that I think is going to be a home run. For more description of this area, this is a rail yard that is older than the state of Colorado. This is an area where there are multiple historic buildings that, honestly, Richie, look like shacks. I am the biggest proponent of preserving our historic nature. Denver has so much history that people do not realize. There's a couple buildings in there that probably should be recognized and kept and maybe turned into bars or some part of the stadium, kind of like how the San Diego Padres did in left field, right? Or the Houston Astros have done with the train station as part of their stadium. There's opportunity there. There are cool opportunities there. Heck, maybe one day the Broncos incorporate some sort of rail homage on a third jersey or something, right? Because this is one of the coolest parts of the state of Colorado, is we were connected by rail, Richie. Our whole state was connected by rail. Narrow gauge rail is how we got down from the mines and our gold and our silver and our iron and our lead, and it got back to Denver, where it shipped out across the country. And right here at Burnham Yards is one of the places where narrow gauge rail was converted back to standard gauge rail, and they would move those shipments. So there is so much history at this site, and it's been completely unused and undervalued by the city of Denver for so long. So for a private investor to come in and say, we're going to turn this into a hub, I think is such a win for the community.
Obviously, the nature of the discourse after yesterday's announcement has been what they're going to do with this new site at Burnham Yard. But there's also an equally interesting question, I think, that's been alluded to a lesser degree, about what can be done with the current site of Empower Field at Mile High. What, if anything, have you heard about potential development plans in that area? And maybe what would you personally like to see done with the old stadium site once the new one is completed?
Yeah, Sun Valley is also one of Denver's oldest neighborhoods, historically one of the Jewish communities in Denver. That kind of was overdone when they built the viaducts of Colfax over that community and did not really pay it homage. And they kind of redlined that community, just like they have in a way, La Alma Lincoln Park at different times, the city of Denver and its history. And you're looking at an opportunity to connect two historic minority communities and rebuild them in a way that will make economic opportunity for the city. So Sun Valley and the west side of Denver in general is an area that is growing. It's an area that honestly, it's a little bit cheaper to live in right now. If you're looking to get into the game in Denver, that is kind of where it's affordable. So this is an area that if they tear this stadium down and they really build it into housing, it's really close to downtown. It has highway access. It has transit access. It could be a big win for that community in general as well. But I've also heard some things that have not been reported, Richie, some stuff that I've been talking behind the scenes with people about, whether or not Empower Field will come down, whether or not they convert that into a different type of stadium. What if, for instance, and that property sits right up against the Ball Arena redevelopment, Stan Kroenke wants to get into this game, and Stan Kroenke wants to move his soccer team from Commerce City downtown. This might be their golden opportunity to do that. Or let's say they want to change the plan of where Elitch's is relocating, or if Elitch's is relocating at all, and they want to build that development just on the other side of the river where the stadium is right now, where the Broncos play. There are all sorts of opportunity here. And I think Mayor Mike Johnson said it really best with, we have an unbelievable opportunity to redevelop not just one, but two of the biggest infill locations in the city of Denver, all in the same decade. And I think this is a really interesting thing because you have, like I said at the start of the show, not one, not two, not three, but four different huge redevelopment project opportunities, all within basically the same exact space going on the two on the south side of South Platte River, one on the east side of South Platte River, and then one on the northwest side of South Platte River. Like this is all happening like right in the same spot. So for people who do not know Denver and watch this show, and Broncos fans and, from all around the world who do not understand and conceptualize our city, all of these four areas are within walking distance of each other, and I could hop on my bike and be within all four within 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how it all plays out. And the last thing that I have for you goes slightly back to the funding element of things, because you mentioned that as your number one most important thing about this announcement was that it was privately funded, not incurring any additional taxpayer dollars, and there remains to be seen what kind of city involvement from a funding perspective is put in place there. There's also been kind of, and this started with a Broncos email to season ticket holders, and there's been some rumors and some whispers about the potential for PSLs or personal seat licenses to potentially make their way to the Denver Broncos and really to a Colorado sports scene that has just never seen them in its history, to my knowledge. Does that, if that is the direction that is gone, as it is in Buffalo, who, by the way, is double dipping in that they are getting taxpayer funding to go toward the stadium, and then personal seat licenses are coming. So that's a little bit of a 1-2 punch up in Orchard Park as well. But if personal seat licenses are implemented as a part of this new stadium rollout, does that in any way to you diminish the gesture or the symbolism behind privately funding it and not incurring any taxpayer dollars? Or is that just a recognition of evolving times in professional sports and specifically the NFL?
No, the NFL and the Broncos leaning on the NFL and Broncos ticket holders to pay for the stadium, I think is completely within bounds. They will indirectly or directly be paying for it no matter what. Like the price of tickets will probably go up. So if it's a PSL or if they just simply raise the price of tickets, that's what's going to be funding the stadium eventually. Or indirectly, let's say you move into the neighborhood. Well, your landlord might be Carrie Walton Penner. Like, so these are different ways that this stadium is going to be funded. So I don't mind the PSLs actually that much, especially when you're not double dipping. If they were double dipping, I think I would have a lot of problems with the funding in general. The thing to watch out here for is they did say no new taxes, and they will not be using some sort of giant bill like the Colorado Rockies did in 1995 to get their stadium built. But that doesn't mean necessarily that state funding and state resources or city funding and city resources will not go to this project. And that's something to watch out for. With the NWSL Stadium, there is a fight over about $75 million in capital investment funds for that site and how they're going to remanage different things from highway to bridges to, just the way the land works and other stuff. I'm not even saying it's going to be that much money. It could be more, it could be less. there's going to be some sort of ask from the Broncos with this site to change things that the city is going to have to pay for. For instance, the 8th Avenue Viaduct runs right over that site. And if you just look at that site, it makes the most sense to place the Broncos Stadium basically in the middle of that site where the 8th Avenue Viaduct currently runs. So you're going to have to reroute the road network of the city, which is going to take city funds. Now, something that's very key in all of this announcement, which is probably going to be $1 billion investment, or at least a $500 million investment from the Broncos, which is going completely untalked about, is they themselves are buying Denver Water's current land and headquarters, relocating them to other campuses that the Broncos are paying for, both the land and constructing the new buildings. The Denver Broncos are basically building the city of Denver a new water utility. Like, that is actually happening right now. Not, completely down to the stubs, but there's parts of it where they are paying for the city of Denver's new infrastructure. So will they be doing that when it comes time to rebuild the roads, or will they lean on the city for that? There are parts of this project that need different avenues, literally, to get to the stadium. Like, the junctions I talked about in that area, which are suited for a lot of traffic, are not suited for an event with 80,000 people taking place right downtown right now. You're going to have to rebuild highway interchanges in an area where there are already a ton of highway interchanges. So there are certain things that I'm betting CDOT and Doty and all these different organizations within Denver that are state funded and Colorado that are state funded are going to have to pay for, at least to some extent. I'm not expecting personally this to be, $1 billion. It's probably, if I had to ballpark it, somewhere between $10 and $100 million. But this is something where state funding and city funding is going to come into play. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing, because if the Broncos are investing this much in a community and they're doing this much for the community, at a certain point, like, you didn't raise the tax dollars, it makes sense to help chip in a little bit. It's a drop in the bucket comparatively with what they're doing. It's a completely different ask than $750 million as taxpayer money.
Right. There is a certain element of like, hey, I as the Walton Penner Ownership Group have put a pretty significant dollar figure of my bottom line to do all of this. And
can we rebuild the sewer lines to handle 80,000 people? Like,
right. Yeah. That's true. That is fair. And there's so many fascinating things like that that come into a stadium development or any kind of major construction project that kind of changes the entire ecosystem of a city based on where you drop it and how you approach the surrounding areas. And it's just, to be honest with you, I don't know 100% within the plot of land where it's going to go, exactly what it's going to look like. But if there's one thing that I've hammered home, Jake, in the handful of years that this Walton Penner Ownership Group has taken charge of things here in Denver, is that whatever they do, it is going to be the top of the line, the toppest notch, and something that we here in Broncos country, and just as sports fans here in the state of Colorado, are going to be maybe in some ways unprepared for, given what we've had and experienced in the past, especially from an ownership perspective with the Denver Broncos. I think that Greg Penner has had as close to a Midas touch with things here in Colorado as you could ask. Every decision he has made, even some decisions he prevented from being made, as our friend Pablo Torre found out, and several others have just aged in the best possible way in the short period of time for somebody who is still kind of coming at the other end of their own NFL baptism, beyond the business perspective. So I can't wait to see where it goes. And I have utmost faith and confidence in this ownership group to get the best possible thing constructed and created in the way that is the least disruptive to the community and least burdensome financially on the community as possible.
They've done everything right, or just about everything right up to this point, but that doesn't mean they're going to do everything right in the future.
Yeah.
And the best part is they know that. Like, they're living like that. They're like, we have earned this, grace from the community because we have done the things that deserve the grace, but that doesn't mean that we're going to do things right in the future. And the things they've done already in setting up this project and talking to key stakeholders of this project, people who are involved in the community. The Broncos have reached out to a lot of these people already. before this got announced, and they are on board. They're trying to make sure they hear everybody and listen to everybody and try to fit those concerns into the project. So the fact that they're doing that tells me that they are completely invested in this community and continuing to do right by it. And that says a lot to me. So I'm not the biggest fawning over ownership and billionaires, but they are someone who has deserved a lot of the credit. They even from replacing the grass so the players don't get hurt.
Yes.
Like, they have done so many little things that are the right thing to do. And I applaud them, because the owners of the teams I root for have never done things like that.
It could very easily take the path of lesser resistance, like so many owners across so many different sports leagues and even businesses, to be honest with you, take. They absolutely could have done what the Pagula family has done. And even though they are worth a collective $80-something billion, say, hey, we're going to taxpayer fund this and we're going to add this, because the people with that kind of wealth and stature write their own rules. And so the fact that they've resisted that, to your point, I think does deserve a little bit of acknowledgement.
Richie, their cousins don't have a practice facility for their NBA champion or NHL champion hockey and basketball teams. Like, the Broncos are tearing down their facility to build a nicer one. And their one right now is not that old. Like, it's a little outdated, but it's not that old. And similarly, this stadium that they have right now, it's okay. It's kind of a dump, honestly. Like, they didn't do it right the first time. Like, it was going to be aged pretty drastically here within the next 5 to 10 years. And guess what? Ownership saw that out and said, we're going to make it as good as possible for the next 5 to 10 years, and then we're going to move out, and we're going to get something that is more modern with the rest of the NFL. So that is great, because we won't have the eyesore or one of the worst stadium situations in the NFL, because in my opinion, that was going to be developing. And Power Field at Mile High, a lot of people have great memories there. I myself have great memories there. That is not a world-class stadium. That is not one of the better stadiums in the NFL. And we in Denver will have one of those very shortly. So that's pretty remarkable that we went from something that is honestly subpar to something that's going to be up there.
Exciting, man. It's exciting news. It was an exciting development yesterday that came with a massive joint statement from the Broncos and the city and the state, and a video tribute that paid homage to some of the historical things that we've kind of connected and tied a bow on this show. And things are happening. Things are happening, and it's going to be a fun story to continue to follow along. And I know that you and the rest of our intrepid staff at DenverSports.com will be all over it, as you always are. So, Jake, thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll catch up with you again whenever the next big news story breaks here in town.
Thanks, guys. None will be as big as this. This is the biggest story since the Broncos probably won the Super Bowl.
Wow, you're probably right about that, to be honest with you, and it just forecasts more exciting things to come. Jake, thank you again. To the rest of you out there, have a wonderful rest of your afternoon. We'll see you at noon for tomorrow's Rundown.
I do what I love what I do. Second nature to put in the work.